Millionaire ordered to pay $962 to 5 gold-digging models until a poor little girl walks into court and reveals something that leaves everyone in shock. Before we begin, our community spans all continents. If you feel comfortable, mention your city's name in the comments. If you appreciate being part of this global community, please like and follow our channel. The gavel slammed down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Robert Caldwell, once celebrated as America's most innovative tech entrepreneur, now sat defeated, his shoulders slumped under the weight of the verdict. The jury had spoken. $962 million to be paid to the 5 women who had accused him of harassment, discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment at his billion-dollar company, Horizon Technologies. This verdict sends a message that no one is above the law, no matter how wealthy or powerful. District Attorney Patricia Lawson announced triumphantly to the crowd of reporters. The 5 plaintiffs, Vanessa Morgan, Breonna Taylor, Allison Parker, Natalie Reynolds, and Diana Chen stood behind her, their faces solemn yet victorious. Robert's attorney, James Wilson, placed a hand on his client's shoulder. "We'll appeal, Bob. This isn't over." But Robert barely heard him. His eyes were fixed on his ex-wife Catherine in the gallery, her face a mask of disappointment. They had divorced 6 years ago, but he had always hoped to regain her respect, if not her love. Now that seemed impossible. Judge Harold Whitman was about to adjourn when the courtroom doors burst open. "Stop! They lied!" The high-pitched voice cut through the murmurs of the courtroom like a knife. All heads turned. Standing in the doorway, clutching a purple backpack to her chest, was a small girl with blonde pigtails and fierce determination in her eyes. "Young lady, this is a court of law," Judge Whitman began. "My name is Emma Caldwell. I'm 11 years old, and these women are lying about my dad." She marched down the aisle, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. The 5 models exchanged nervous glances. "Who is this kid?" Vanessa whispered loudly. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous," the DA protested. "The child should be removed immediately." Catherine rose from her seat. "Emma, what are you doing here?" "You're supposed to be at school." But Emma wasn't listening. She reached Robert and looked up at him with her mother's determined eyes. "I found proof, Dad. I know you'd never do what they said." Judge Whitman banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! I want order in this court!" When the commotion finally settled, he leaned forward. "Young lady, approach the bench." As Emma walked toward the judge, Robert felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. "Your Honor," Emma said, her voice suddenly small but steady, "I have evidence that these women made everything up. It's all in here." She clutched her backpack tighter. The courtroom erupted again, but one question hung in the air. How could this child have proof that an entire legal team couldn't find? 6 months earlier, Robert Caldwell was living the American dream. At 53, he had built Horizon Technologies from his garage into a global powerhouse. The company's innovative holographic display technology had revolutionized everything from medical imaging to entertainment. Forbes had featured him on its cover, calling him the visionary behind tomorrow's technology. That Tuesday morning began like any other. Robert arrived at the sleek glass headquarters in Palo Alto at 6 a.m. before most of his employees. His executive assistant, Melissa Reed, handed him his usual black coffee. "The models for the spring campaign are coming in at 9, she reminded him. "Marketing wants you to approve the final concept." Robert nodded absently, already reviewing quarterly projections. Horizon had been using renowned models for their advertising campaigns for years. It brought attention to their products and helped them compete with larger tech companies. At his ex-wife's home across town, Emma Caldwell was just waking up. Her room was a curious blend of typical preteen interests and surprisingly advanced technology. A poster of the latest pop sensation hung beside a whiteboard covered in complex coding problems. "Emma, breakfast!" Catherine called from downstairs. Emma grabbed her tablet, still working on a program she'd been developing. Unlike other kids her age, Emma had inherited her father's brilliant mind for technology. While her classmates played video games, she designed them. "It's pancake day," Catherine said when Emma appeared in the kitchen. "And your dad's picking you up after school for your weekend visit?" Emma's face lit up. Despite their divorce, her parents had maintained a civil relationship for her sake. Catherine, a pediatric surgeon, had custody during the week, while Robert took her on weekends. Though her father worked long hours, their weekends together were filled with coding projects, sci-fi movie marathons, and walks along the bay. "Can we finish our hologram project?" Emma asked, pouring maple syrup over her pancakes. "I've cleared my schedule." Catherine smiled, though something in her expression seemed strained. That afternoon, when Robert picked up Emma, he seemed distracted. She noticed immediately her father was usually full of questions about her day. "Dad? Is everything okay?" Robert forced a smile. "Just work stuff, pumpkin. Nothing for you to worry about." But Emma knew her father. Something was wrong. It wasn't until they were in his home lab, working on their project, that he finally spoke about it. Sometimes people misunderstand things, or they see what they want to see." Emma looked up from the circuit board she was solaring. "What do you mean?" Robert sighed. "Some of the models from our marketing campaigns are saying I did things, inappropriate things." "That's stupid," Emma said immediately. "You wouldn't do that." Robert smiled sadly. "I know that and you know that. But proving it to everyone else might be difficult." Emma put down her soldering iron. "But you're innocent, and the truth always comes out in the end. That's what you always tell me." "I hope you're right, Em," he replied, but his voice lacked conviction. What Robert didn't tell Emma was that the allegations had already cost him 3 major contracts, and that his board of directors was meeting on Monday to discuss his future with the company he had built from nothing. Vanessa Morgan stepped out of the sleek black Tesla, her Louboutin heels clicking on the pavement outside Café Noir, an exclusive spot in downtown San Francisco. The restaurant's dim lighting and private alcoves made it perfect for conversations that weren't meant for public ears. Inside, the other 4 women were already seated at a corner table. Brianna was nervously twisting her diamond tennis bracelet. Allison checked her reflection in a compact mirror. Natalie sipped a martini, her face unreadable. Diana, the youngest at 24, kept glancing toward the door. "Ladies," Vanessa greeted them, sliding into the empty chair. At 32, she was the oldest and undeniably the leader. "I trust everyone's prepared for tomorrow's deposition." "Are we really going through with this?" Diana whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I mean, Mr. Caldwell was always professional with me." Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Diana, sweetie, we've discussed this. You've seen how this industry treats women once they hit 30. This is our security plan." 13 months ago, Vanessa had been Horizon's primary campaign model for 3 years. Then Robert had ended her contract, choosing newer faces for the company's rebranding. The rejection had been humiliating. More importantly, it had been expensive. No more 6-figure modeling contracts meant no more luxury apartment, exotic vacations, or exclusive parties. "Robert Caldwell ruined my career," she continued, voice hardening. "He replaced me with younger models without a second thought. Now he'll pay for treating us like disposable objects." "But fabricating harassment claims?" Allison asked, lowering her voice. "What if we get caught?" "We won't," Vanessa assured them. "It's 5 respected professionals against 1 middle-aged tech bro. In this climate, we're bulletproof." Natalie nodded. "My brother's a lawyer. He says companies almost always settle these cases to avoid publicity." Caldwell will pay us to go away long before this reaches a courtroom. And if he doesn't, Brianna asked. Then we make him suffer publicly, Vanessa said coldly. My contact at TMZ is already interested in an exclusive interview with victims of tech industry harassment. So once the media machine starts, his reputation will be destroyed, regardless of any verdict. What none of them noticed was the waitress lingering nearby, her eyes widening at their conversation. Melissa Reed, Robert's executive assistant, had been picking up takeout when she spotted the women. On impulse, she had positioned herself within earshot. As the women continued plotting, Melissa discreetly recorded snippets of their conversation on her phone. It wasn't much, just fragments that might not hold up legally, but it confirmed what she had suspected. The allegations against her boss were fabricated. The next day, Melissa tried to tell Robert about what she'd overheard, but he dismissed her concerns. Mel, I appreciate your loyalty, but recording private conversations could be illegal. Delete it. We'll defend ourselves properly through legal channels. Melissa reluctantly complied, deleting the recording. But she remained troubled, especially as the allegations gained traction in the press. More disturbing was how quickly people believed the worst about Robert. Colleagues who had worked with him for years now avoided eye contact in the hallways. Meanwhile, the 5 models strategy was working perfectly. Horizon's stock plummeted. The board placed Robert on administrative leave, and their legal team reached out about a potential settlement. But Vanessa didn't want a settlement. She wanted vindication. She wanted revenge. What she didn't count on was an 11-year-old girl who loved her father more than anything in the world. The first signs of trouble came in the form of whispers. Emma noticed them when she visited her father at work one weekend, employees falling silent when they saw her, exchanging glances laden with pity. Robert tried to shield her from it, but Emma was perceptive beyond her years. By the time the story broke in the mainstream media, it was impossible to ignore. Tech mogul accused of systematic harassment, screamed the headlines. Emma's classmates suddenly had questions. Their parents looked at her differently during school pickup. Dad, I saw the news, Emma said during their weekend together, 3 months after the allegations surfaced. They were in his home lab, but neither was focused on their usual projects. Robert set down the circuit board he'd been pretending to work on. I'm sorry you had to see that, Em. Why don't you just tell everyone they're lying? It's not that simple, he sighed. It's their word against mine, and there are 5 of them. Emma's brow furrowed. But isn't there evidence? Security cameras or emails or something? The incidents they describe conveniently happened in places without cameras, and they claim I was careful never to put anything in writing. He ran a hand through his graying hair. The timing of these allegations is interesting. What do you mean? Vanessa Morgan was our lead model for years. When we rebranded last year, we didn't renew her contract. A month later, these allegations appeared. Emma's eyes narrowed. So she's mad you fired her? We didn't fire her. Her contract simply ended. But yes, she was displeased. That night, after her father thought she was asleep, Emma crept downstairs and found him staring at his laptop, the blue light illuminating his exhausted face. On the screen was a spreadsheet detailing his rapidly diminishing assets. Legal fees, lost contracts, plummeting stock values. The numbers were staggering. The next morning, Emma noticed something she hadn't before. Her father's hands trembled slightly as he made breakfast. Robert Caldwell, who had once exuded confidence and energy, now moved like a man twice his age. At school on Monday, Emma couldn't concentrate. During computer lab, instead of working on the assigned project, she began researching the 5 models accusing her father. Social media accounts, interviews, public appearances, Emma absorbed everything she could find. Something about Natalie Reynolds caught her attention. In a photo from 6 months ago, Natalie was wearing a distinctive necklace, a silver pendant with a unique geometric design. Emma had seen that necklace before in her mother's jewelry box. That evening, when Catherine was working late at the hospital, Emma slipped into her mother's bedroom. The jewelry box sat on the dresser, its contents familiar from years of playing dress-up. Emma carefully opened the compartments until she found it. The silver pendant, exactly like Natalie's. Her heart pounding, Emma examined the necklace. Engraved on the back was a message, "For all your passion, always, N." Emma's mind raced. How did her mother have a necklace like Natalie's? Why would Natalie give her mother jewelry? Were they friends? But if so, why had her mother never mentioned knowing one of her father's accusers? She carefully replaced the necklace and left the room, more confused than ever. That night, sleep eluded her as questions multiplied in her mind. There was more to this story than anyone was telling her, and Emma Caldwell decided she would uncover the truth, no matter what. Catherine Caldwell's house was silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Emma sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by printouts of social media posts, news articles, and hastily scribbled notes. For 2 weeks, she had been building what she called her truth map, a web of connections between the 5 models accusing her father. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Photos showing Vanessa and Brianna together at events dating back 5 years, long before they claimed to have met while working for Horizon. An Instagram post where Natalie mentioned a lucrative opportunity just days before filing the lawsuit. A tweet from Allison about karma finally catching up to someone who had discarded her. But most disturbing was what Emma had discovered about her mother and Natalie Reynolds. They had attended the same university, belonged to the same sorority, and appeared in several old photos together. They weren't just acquaintances. They had been friends. Emma picked up her tablet and opened a password-protected folder. Inside was a copy of an email she had found while using her mother's computer to print homework. It was from Natalie to Catherine, dated just before the allegations went public. "Kat, I know this puts you in an awkward position, but trust me, it's for the best. He deserves what's coming, and Emma will be better off in the long run without his influence. Once this is over, you'll have full custody and the financial security you deserve. Just remember our agreement. No contact until after the settlement. N." Emma had read it dozens of times, trying to understand what it meant. Was her mother somehow involved in the plot against her father? The thought made her stomach twist. The sound of a car in the driveway jolted Emma from her thoughts. She quickly gathered her materials and stuffed them under her bed as her mother's footsteps approached. "Emma, are you still awake?" Catherine called softly, opening the door. "Just finishing some homework," Emma lied, gesturing to the math textbook she'd hastily opened on her desk. Catherine smiled, but her eyes seemed troubled. "It's late, sweetheart. Don't stay up too much longer." After her mother left, Emma retrieved her tablet and opened a specialized audio app she had developed. It was one of her passion projects, a program that could isolate and enhance specific sounds from recordings. She connected it to a small device she had hidden in her mother's home office 3 days ago. Emma had never spied on her mother before. The guilt was overwhelming, but so was her determination to help her father. She pressed play and heard her mother's voice clear through the speakers. "I don't care about the money, Nat. This has gone too far. The board is forcing him out of his own company. Do you know what that will do to him?" Natalie's voice responded, slightly distorted through the phone. "It's too late to back out now. Vanessa has everything in motion, and the lawyers say we're going to win. Just stick to the plan." "And what about Emma? She adores her father. How do I explain to her that I helped destroy him?" "She's young. She'll adjust. Besides, with your share of the settlement, you can give her everything she's ever wanted." The recording continued, revealing more details about the conspiracy, how Vanessa had orchestrated everything out of revenge, how the other women had joined for financial gain, and how Natalie had recruited Catherine by exploiting old grievances from the divorce. Emma sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. Her own mother was part of the plot to destroy her father, but the recording also revealed something else. Catherine was having second thoughts. As Emma processed this betrayal, she noticed a notification on her tablet. The facial recognition program she'd been running on her father's home security footage had found something. Emma opened the alert and gasped. The cameras had captured Vanessa Morgan entering her father's home office when no one was there, during a company party 6 months ago. The timestamp matched precisely when Robert was giving a speech in the main room. Emma had checked the event timeline. Vanessa had spent 7 minutes alone in the office before rejoining the party. What had she been doing there, and how had she gained access? Emma's mind raced as new possibilities emerged. She needed to check her father's home office. There might be physical evidence of tampering. But more importantly, she now had proof that at least placed Vanessa where she shouldn't have been. It wasn't enough to exonerate her father yet, but it was a start. And Emma Caldwell was just getting warmed up. The courthouse loomed before Emma, its stone facade intimidating in the morning light. She clutched her purple backpack containing everything she had gathered: the recordings, the evidence of Vanessa's unauthorized access, screenshots of contradictory social media posts, and most damning of all, a USB drive she had found hidden in her father's home office. Getting to the courthouse had required elaborate planning. She had feigned illness to stay home from school, waited until her mother left for work, then called an Uber using her emergency phone. The driver had been hesitant to transport an unaccompanied minor, but Emma had spun a convincing story about meeting her father for a school project. Now, standing on the courthouse steps, doubt crept in. Would anyone listen to an 11-year-old? Would her evidence be enough? What if she made things worse for her father? Emma took a deep breath and remembered what Robert always told her. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. Inside, she navigated the bustling corridors, following signs to courtroom 305. As she approached the heavy wooden doors, she heard the judge's voice announcing the verdict. She was almost too late. Emma pushed the doors open with all her strength, her voice rising above the murmurs of the crowded room. "Stop! They lied!" And the chaos that followed was overwhelming. Her mother's shocked face, her father's confusion, the model's alarm, the judge's stern reprimand, it all blurred together. But Emma stood her ground. Now, sitting in Judge Whitman's chambers, Emma faced questioning from the judge, both attorneys, and a court-appointed child advocate named Ms. Donovan. Her mother and father waited outside, both barred from the discussion to ensure Emma could speak freely. "Young lady," Judge Whitman began, his tone gentler than in the courtroom, "I understand you believe you have evidence, but I need to know how you obtained it." Emma swallowed hard. "Some of it I found while investigating on my own. The recordings. I made those without permission. I know that was wrong, but I didn't know what else to do." Ms. Donovan placed a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder. "Take your time and tell us exactly what you found." Emma opened her backpack and carefully laid out her evidence, explaining each item methodically, as her father had taught her to do with scientific experiments. "This USB drive is the most important," she said, holding up a small black device. "I found it hidden behind the baseboard in Dad's home office. It contains original files that match ones that were altered and submitted as evidence by the plaintiffs." D.A. Lawson frowned. "What do you mean, altered?" "The photos they submitted, showing Dad with the models in inappropriate situations. They're digitally manipulated. This drive has the original unaltered images. The metadata proves when the files were modified." James Wilson, Robert's attorney, leaned forward. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the USB drive. Judge Whitman nodded, and Wilson connected it to the computer in the chamber. The screen displayed side-by-side comparisons, the originals showing normal business interactions and the altered versions with subtle but significant changes to body positions, facial expressions, and even clothing. This could have been fabricated recently, D.A. Lawson argued. The drive has a digital timestamp from over a year ago, Emma countered, and there's more. I have recordings of the models discussing their plan, admitting it was fake. The adults exchanged glances as Emma played the audio files. The conversation between her mother and Natalie was particularly damning. "There's also this," Emma continued, showing the security footage of Vanessa entering Robert's office during the party. She was alone in his office when everyone else was at the company party. I think that's when she stole the original photos that were later altered. Judge Whitman removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Ms. Donovan, would you please take Emma outside while we discuss this?" As she was led from the room, Emma caught a glimpse of her father through the partially open door. The hope in his eyes gave her strength. In the hallway, her mother rushed toward her. "Emma, what have you done?" Catherine whispered, her face pale. "The right thing," Emma replied simply. "You should have too." Before Catherine could respond, the chamber door opened and Judge Whitman called them all back in. The 5 models were summoned as well, their confident demeanors now visibly shaken. "Based on the preliminary evidence presented," Judge Whitman announced, "I am issuing an immediate stay on the judgment pending a full investigation into possible perjury and evidence tampering." The courtroom erupted once more, but Emma heard only her father's words as he embraced her tightly. "You saved me, Em. How did you get so brave?" Emma held him just as tightly. "From you, Dad. I learned it from you." But even as relief washed over her, Emma knew this was just the beginning. The models wouldn't go down without a fight. Her mother's involvement complicated everything. And somewhere out there was the person who had helped them alter the photos, someone with technical skills and access to Horizon's systems. The truth was finally emerging, but at what cost to her family? The following week unfolded like a whirlwind. Judge Whitman had appointed a special investigator, former FBI forensic expert Dr. Maya Sandoval, to examine Emma's evidence and determine its authenticity. The story had exploded across national media. Child genius uncovers conspiracy against tech billionaire father. Camera crews camped outside both Robert's and Catherine's homes, forcing Emma to stay with her father in his secluded Lake Tahoe cabin while the investigation proceeded. Catherine had retreated to her sister's house in Portland after her involvement became public. The recorded conversation with Natalie had been damning, though her attorney insisted she had been manipulated and had never intended to go through with the scheme. Emma sat on the cabin's deck, overlooking the still blue waters of Lake Tahoe, her tablet in her lap. She was combing through her father's company emails, with his permission this time, searching for any digital breadcrumbs that might reveal who had helped the models doctor the photos. The technical sophistication of the alterations suggested someone with advanced skills. "Find anything?" Robert asked, setting a mug of hot chocolate beside her. Emma shook her head. "Not yet, but I've been thinking about something else." "What's that, Pumpkin?" "Mom." Emma's voice caught slightly. In that recording, she sounded like she wanted to back out, like she regretted getting involved. Robert sighed, taking a seat beside her. "Your mother and I, our relationship is complicated, Em. The divorce wasn't just about growing apart. I worked too much, focused on the company more than our family. She had resentments I never fully understood. That doesn't excuse what she did," Emma said firmly. "No, it doesn't. But understanding why people make bad choices is part of forgiveness." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. And regardless of what happens with the case, she's still your mother. She loves you." Emma wasn't ready to process that yet. Instead, she returned to her search, scrolling through months of emails. Suddenly she paused, her eyes narrowing at a message from 6 months ago. "Dad, look at this." She pointed to an email from the IT department. "Someone requested access to your private server for system maintenance the night before that company party, the one where Vanessa went into your office." Robert frowned. "I never authorized that." The request came from Melissa Reed's account. "Melissa, that doesn't make sense. She's been with me for years." He pulled out his phone. "I need to call James." While Robert spoke with his attorney, Emma continued digging. She found more troubling emails sent from Melissa's account, all granting various levels of access to company systems. But something felt off. The writing style didn't match other emails Melissa had sent. The timestamps showed many were sent outside office hours, some while Melissa was known to be in meetings with Robert. Emma's suspicions grew. "Dad, I don't think Melissa sent these. I think someone hacked her account." Before Robert could respond, his phone rang. It was Dr. Sandoval. "Mr. Caldwell, we've completed our preliminary analysis," the forensic expert said, her voice crisp and professional. "The USB drive your daughter found contains authentic original images. The metadata confirms they were accessed and copied approximately 6 months ago, and the altered versions were created using sophisticated AI imaging software. Can you trace who did it?" "Not yet, but we've found something else. The 5 plaintiffs have been in regular contact for years, contradicting their testimony that they only met after independently experiencing harassment. Their bank records show unusual deposits from offshore accounts just before filing the lawsuit." Robert exhaled slowly. "What happens now?" "Judge Whitman has scheduled an emergency hearing for tomorrow. I'd suggest you and Emma be there." After ending the call, Robert explained the development to Emma. "It's looking good, Em. They've confirmed the photos were doctored." Emma nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. "Dad, tomorrow at the hearing, I want to confront Mom." Robert hesitated. "Are you sure? It's going to be intense enough already." "I need to understand why she did it." Emma's voice was quiet, but determined. "And I think I know who helped the models alter those photos." "Who?" "I'm not certain yet, but I have a theory. There's someone at Horizon with both the technical skills and access to your systems, someone who might have a grudge against you." "Emma, half my tech team could fit that description. I've had to make tough decisions over the years, but only one person had the specific access needed." Emma pulled up an organizational chart on her tablet. "Your former Chief Technology Officer, Derek Sullivan." "Derek?" Robert looked surprised. "He left the company almost a year ago. We had creative differences about the direction of our technology." "You mean you fired him?" Emma said bluntly. "It was a mutual—" Robert stopped and sighed. "Yes, essentially. His ideas were brilliant, but ethically questionable. He wanted to integrate biometric data collection into our consumer products without user consent. When I refused, things got ugly." Emma nodded, pieces falling into place. "And when was Vanessa's contract not renewed?" "Around the same time." Robert's eyes widened with realization. "You think they're working together? Derek and Vanessa?" "It makes sense. He has the technical skills to alter the photos and hack into Melissa's account. Vanessa has the motive and connections to the other models. Together, they could have orchestrated the whole thing." Robert reached for his phone again. "I need to tell James and Dr. Sandoval about this immediately." As he made the call, Emma turned back to the lake, watching the setting sun cast golden light across the water. Tomorrow would bring confrontations she wasn't sure she was ready for, with the women who had tried to destroy her father, with the man who might have helped them, and hardest of all, with her mother. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Emma felt certain that the truth would finally come to light. The courthouse steps were a gauntlet of reporters and cameras the next morning. Robert held Emma's hand firmly as they navigated through the crowd, both wearing sunglasses despite the overcast day. James Wilson met them at the entrance, his expression grim but determined. "The judge has agreed to hear the new evidence," he explained as they walked toward courtroom 305. "Dr. Sandoval will present her findings first. Then we'll have an opportunity to introduce the connection to Derek Sullivan." "Have they found him?" Emma asked. James shook his head. "Not yet. He apparently left for Singapore 3 days ago, right after Emma's courtroom revelation." Inside, the courtroom was already packed. The 5 models sat together with their attorney, looking considerably less confident than before. District Attorney Lawson was in deep conversation with her assistant. And in the back row, almost hidden from view, sat Catherine Caldwell. Emma's steps faltered when she spotted her mother. Catherine looked up, their eyes meeting across the room. The pain and regret in her mother's gaze was unmistakable, but Emma turned away, focusing instead on the path to their seats. Judge Whitman entered, and the proceedings began. Dr. Sandoval presented her findings methodically, her voice steady as she explained the technical details of how the photos had been manipulated. "In my professional opinion," she concluded, "these images were altered using advanced AI software, typically only available to high-level security firms or research institutions. The alterations are sophisticated enough to fool most observers, but contain telltale artifacts consistent with digital manipulation." D.A. Lawson rose for cross-examination. "Dr. Sandoval, isn't it possible that the USB drive itself was fabricated recently and made to appear older?" "We considered that possibility," Dr. Sandoval replied. "However, the drive contains system access logs and metadata that would be extraordinarily difficult to falsify consistently across thousands of files. Additionally, we found fragments of the original images in Horizon Technologies' server backups that match those on the drive." Judge Whitman turned to the 5 plaintiffs. "Given this evidence, do any of you wish to modify your testimony?" The women exchanged glances. Diana Chen, the youngest, suddenly stood. "Your Honor, I want to tell the truth." Her attorney tried to pull her back down, but Diana moved away from him. "I never experienced any harassment from Mr. Caldwell. Vanessa approached me 8 months ago with a proposal. She said it would be easy money, that companies always settle these cases quickly and quietly." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Whitman banged his gavel. "Order!" "Miss Chen," he continued when the room quieted, "are you aware that making false accusations under oath constitutes perjury?" Diana nodded, tears forming. "Yes, Your Honor. But I can't continue with this lie, not after seeing what it's done to Mr. Caldwell and his daughter." Vanessa Morgan stood abruptly. "Diana, sit down." "You have no idea what you're doing." "I believe I do, Ms. Morgan," Judge Whitman interrupted. "Miss Chen, please continue." Diana wiped her eyes. Vanessa orchestrated everything. She was furious when her contract wasn't renewed. She contacted each of us individually, promising significant payouts if we joined her lawsuit. "And who helped create the false evidence?" James Wilson asked. "Derek Sullivan," Diana replied. "He and Vanessa were involved. He said he could access Mr. Caldwell's private files and communications, make it look like he had behaved inappropriately with all of us." Emma couldn't help but feel a small surge of satisfaction. Her theory had been correct. "Your Honor," D.A. Lawson interjected, "while Miss Chen's testimony is concerning, it doesn't account for the statements from the other 4 plaintiffs." Before Judge Whitman could respond, the courtroom doors opened. A man in a rumpled suit hurried down the aisle. "Your Honor, my name is Michael Reynolds, Natalie Reynolds' brother. I have information relevant to this case." Judge Whitman looked surprised but nodded. "Approach the bench, Mr. Reynolds." Michael glanced apologetically at his sister as he passed her. Natalie's face had gone deathly pale. "Mr. Reynolds, what information do you have?" Judge Whitman asked. "Your Honor, I'm an attorney. My sister consulted me about this case initially. At the time, she presented it as a legitimate harassment claim. However, last night she called me extremely distressed. She admitted the allegations were fabricated and that Derek Sullivan had helped create false evidence." "Why come forward now, Mr. Reynolds?" Michael handed the judge a USB drive. "This contains recorded conversations between my sister, Vanessa Morgan, and Derek Sullivan, discussing the fabrication of evidence and the recruitment of Catherine Caldwell to their scheme." Natalie stood up. "Mikey, how could you?" "I'm an officer of the court, Nat," he replied quietly. "I couldn't be party to perjury and fraud." Judge Whitman examined the new evidence briefly before addressing the courtroom. "In light of these developments, I'm ordering the immediate arrest of Vanessa Morgan and issuing a warrant for Derek Sullivan. The judgment against Robert Caldwell is hereby vacated, pending criminal investigation into perjury, evidence tampering, and conspiracy charges against all parties involved." As court officers moved toward Vanessa, Emma finally looked at her mother again. Catherine sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. Despite everything, Emma felt a twinge of sympathy. Her mother had made a terrible mistake, but the regret in her eyes seemed genuine. The gavel fell again, and Judge Whitman announced a brief recess. As people began filing out, Emma made a decision. She turned to her father. "Dad, I need to talk to Mom." Robert nodded, understanding. "Do you want me to come with you?" Emma shook her head. "I need to do this alone." Taking a deep breath, she walked toward the back of the courtroom where her mother waited, both dreading and needing the conversation to come. Catherine Caldwell looked up as Emma approached, hope and fear battling in her expression. For a moment, neither spoke. The bustling courtroom seemed to fade away, leaving only mother and daughter in a bubble of tense silence. "Why?" Emma finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How could you do this to Dad?" Catherine closed her eyes briefly, pain etching new lines in her face. "I have no excuse, Emma. What I did was unforgivable." That's not an answer," Emma pressed, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I heard the recording. You were helping them destroy Dad. I want to know why." Catherine gestured to the empty seat beside her. Emma hesitated before sitting down, maintaining a careful distance. "After the divorce," Catherine began slowly, "I was angry and hurt. Your father had built this amazing company and I felt I'd sacrificed my own career to support him, only to be left behind when he succeeded. Natalie contacted me about 6 months ago. We'd been sorority sisters in college, though we hadn't been close in years. She manipulated you," Emma said. "Yes, but I let myself be manipulated. She said Robert had harassed her and others, that he wasn't the man I thought I'd married. At first, I didn't believe her. But she was persuasive, and I was still harboring resentment from our divorce." "So you agreed to help them?" Emma couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. Catherine shook her head, tears forming. "Not at first. I told her I needed proof. That's when she showed me the doctored photos. They looked convincing, Emma. I was shocked and felt betrayed all over again. You could have asked Dad about them." "I should have," Catherine admitted. "But Natalie said they needed my help to encourage other victims to come forward. She appealed to my sense of justice, claiming it wasn't about money, but protecting other women." Emma scoffed. "It was always about money. I realize that now. When they filed the lawsuit and I saw how severe the allegations were, far beyond what Natalie had initially described, I started having doubts. By then, I was already implicated. Natalie reminded me that I'd endorsed their stories, that I could face legal consequences myself if I backed out." "So you stayed silent while they destroyed Dad's life," Emma said flatly. Catherine wiped away tears. The night before the verdict, I told Natalie I was going to the judge with the truth regardless of consequences. She threatened to claim I'd been part of the harassment cover-up all along. I was scared, Emma. I was a coward. Emma studied her mother's face, searching for sincerity. Why should I believe you now? You shouldn't, Catherine said simply. I've broken your trust completely. All I can say is that I'm going to the DA's office after this hearing to make a full statement. I'll accept whatever legal consequences come my way. Something in her mother's defeated posture softened Emma's anger slightly. What happens now? To us? That depends on you and your father, Catherine replied. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday we might find a way forward. I love you more than anything, Emma. That has never changed. Before Emma could respond, a commotion erupted near the courtroom doors. Court officers were restraining someone, a tall man with disheveled dark hair and wild eyes. That's Derek Sullivan, Emma realized, recognizing him from company photos. Derek broke free momentarily, pointing at Robert across the room. You stole my ideas, Caldwell. Everything you built was based on my work. As officers subdued him again, Emma turned back to her mother. I need to go. Dad will want to know what's happening. Catherine nodded. I understand. Emma. She called as her daughter stood to leave. What you did, uncovering the truth, standing up for your father, it was incredibly brave. I'm proud of you, even if I have no right to be. Emma paused, conflicting emotions battling within her. Finally, she said, I don't forgive you yet, but maybe someday. It was the most she could offer. Catherine seemed to understand, nodding sadly as Emma walked away. Robert met Emma halfway across the courtroom. Are you okay? Emma nodded. I think so. They just brought in Derek Sullivan. Robert put a protective arm around her shoulders as James Wilson approached them. Things are moving quickly, the attorney explained. Sullivan was apprehended at the airport trying to board a flight to Mexico. He's apparently been living beyond his means since leaving Horizon and was heavily in debt. The DA believes financial motivation was a significant factor in his involvement. And the models? Robert asked. Vanessa is in custody. Brianna and Allison are cooperating with authorities in exchange for reduced charges. Natalie is speaking with the DA now. Only Diana may avoid criminal charges due to her voluntary testimony. What about Mom? Emma asked quietly. James glanced toward Catherine, who remained seated alone at the back of the courtroom. That's complicated. She wasn't directly involved in creating false evidence, but she had knowledge of the conspiracy. Much will depend on her cooperation going forward. Judge Whitman returned to the bench, calling the court back to session. As they took their seats, Robert squeezed Emma's hand reassuringly. Whatever happens next, he whispered, we'll face it together. Emma nodded, drawing strength from her father's presence. The nightmare wasn't over, but for the first time in months, she could see a path forward, complicated and uncertain, but illuminated by truth. 3 months later, the Caldwell case had faded from headlines, replaced by newer scandals and controversies. But for those directly involved, the repercussions continued to unfold. Emma stood in the backyard of her father's Palo Alto home, adjusting the lens on a sophisticated camera mounted on a tripod. Behind her, Robert was checking connections on a laptop displaying complex holographic imaging software. They were testing a prototype of Horizon's newest technology, a portable hologram generator that could create three-dimensional images from standard photographs. Ready when you are, Em, Robert called. Emma nodded and activated the camera. A soft whirring filled the air as the device scanned their garden. Moments later, a perfect holographic reproduction appeared on the display table they'd set up, complete with fluttering butterflies and swaying flowers. "It's working!" Emma exclaimed, examining the image from different angles. The motion prediction algorithm is capturing micro movements perfectly. Robert grinned. Your modifications to the rendering engine made all the difference. I think we're ready for the board presentation next week. The past months had brought dramatic changes. After the truth about the false allegations emerged, Horizon Technologies' stock had rebounded. Robert had returned as CEO with unanimous board support and launched an ambitious new product line based partly on concepts Emma had developed during their weekend projects. More personally, Emma had started dividing her time more evenly between both parents. Catherine had avoided criminal charges by cooperating fully with prosecutors, though she had lost her position at the hospital and was now working at a community clinic. The relationship between mother and daughter remained fragile, but was slowly healing. As for the conspirators, their fates varied. Vanessa Morgan and Derek Sullivan were awaiting trial on multiple felony charges. Breonna Taylor and Allison Parker had accepted plea deals involving fines, community service, and probation. Natalie Reynolds had provided crucial evidence against the ringleaders in exchange for leniency. Diana Chen had been granted immunity for her truthful testimony. "Dad," Emma said, turning from the hologram, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." "What's that, Pumpkin? Are you going to sue them? For damages, I mean. James said you have a strong case for malicious prosecution." Robert considered the question. "I've thought about it. They nearly destroyed everything I built, not to mention what they put you through." "But," Emma prompted, hearing the hesitation in his voice. "But more legal battles mean more time looking backward instead of forward. Sometimes the best revenge is living well." He gestured to their project. "This technology will help doctors visualize tumors before surgery, allow families to connect across distances like never before, maybe even revolutionize education. That's what I want to focus on." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "What about Horizon's reputation? People believed those lies so easily. We're rebuilding trust day by day. The truth came out thanks to you." He smiled proudly at his daughter. "Besides, I'm implementing those workplace reforms Judge Whitman suggested. Better reporting systems, regular climate surveys, an independent ethics committee. They're good ideas, regardless of what happened." Their conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. Robert checked his watch. "That must be your mom. Ready for dinner?" This would be their first meal together as a family since before the trial. Catherine had suggested it, and to Emma's surprise, Robert had agreed. Emma felt a flutter of anxiety, but nodded. "I'm just going to save our progress," she said, turning back to the computer. As Robert went to answer the door, Emma heard the familiar chime of an incoming email. Glancing at the screen, she saw it was from an unfamiliar address, with the subject line, "You haven't found everything." Curious, Emma opened it. The message contained only one line. "The models weren't the beginning. Ask your father about Project Oracle." There was no signature, but attached was a heavily redacted document on Horizon Technologies' letterhead. What little remained unredacted mentioned predictive behavior algorithms and unauthorized data collection. Emma frowned. The email felt ominous, but was it credible? After everything that had happened, she'd grown wary of manipulation. From the house came the sound of her parents' voices, awkward but civil. Emma hesitated, then closed the email without downloading the attachment. She would investigate, but carefully and in her own time. The recent events had taught her the value of thorough research before making accusations. For now, this dinner represented a fragile new beginning for her family. She wouldn't let anonymous threats disrupt that. Yet as she walked toward the house, questions multiplied in her mind. What was Project Oracle? Why would someone send this now? And most troubling, were there other secrets her father was keeping? Emma resolved to find answers, but she'd proceed cautiously. The last conspiracy had nearly destroyed her family. If there were more hidden truths, she would uncover them methodically, protecting those she loved while still pursuing justice. At the door, she paused and took a deep breath. One challenge at a time. Tonight was about tentative reconciliation. Tomorrow, she would begin a new investigation, discreetly. The mysterious email had awakened her suspicions, but Emma had learned valuable lessons about gathering evidence and verifying facts before jumping to conclusions. Whatever Project Oracle might be, she would approach it with the same determination and intelligence that had saved her father. Some secrets were dangerous. Others were merely complicated. Emma Caldwell was becoming quite adept at telling the difference. The mysterious email about Project Oracle gnawed at Emma's thoughts over the following weeks. She had considered showing it to her father immediately, but hesitated. Their relationship had just returned to solid ground. She was reluctant to introduce new suspicions without substantiating them first. Instead, Emma embarked on careful research. She created a secure virtual environment on her tablet, using techniques she'd learned in her coding classes to ensure her digital footprints remained untraceable. If someone was monitoring Horizon's systems, as they apparently had during the conspiracy, she didn't want to alert them to her investigation. Her first breakthrough came unexpectedly. While helping her father organize old files in his home office, Emma discovered a storage drive labeled simply Legacy Systems 2019-2020. When Robert stepped out to take a business call, curiosity compelled her to connect the drive to her tablet. Most files were exactly what the label suggested: outdated code and system backups. But buried within subfolders was a directory named or Phase 1. Inside were technical specifications for an artificial intelligence system designed to analyze consumer behavior patterns from Horizon's devices. Emma's eyes widened as she read further. Project Oracle had been an experimental AI that would gather data from Horizon's holographic displays installed in homes, offices, and public spaces. The system would use embedded sensors to collect information about users, their reactions, viewing habits, even physiological responses like pupil dilation and heart rate, all without explicit consent. The ethical implications were disturbing. This went far beyond standard data collection practices. If implemented, Oracle would have turned every Horizon device into a sophisticated surveillance tool. Emma quickly copied the files to her secure environment and disconnected the drive just as her father returned. "Find anything interesting?" Robert asked casually. Emma managed a non-committal shrug. "Just old code. Nothing important." That night, unable to sleep, Emma dug deeper. The email sender had implied Oracle was connected to the false allegations somehow. But how? The project appeared to have been terminated in early development. According to the documentation, the executive team had voted against proceeding after ethical concerns were raised. A reference to meeting minutes led Emma to Horizon's secure server. Using her father's credentials, which he had shared with her for their joint projects, she located the archived recording of the critical board meeting from 18 months ago. The video showed Robert and the board members in heated debate. Derek Sullivan, then CTO, was passionately advocating for Project Oracle's approval. "This technology will revolutionize consumer analytics," Derek insisted. "We'll know what people want before they do." "By spying on them in their homes," Robert countered. "This crosses every ethical line we've established as a company. I won't approve it." Derek's face hardened. "We've invested millions in development. The potential profit is—" "I don't care about the potential profit," Robert interrupted. "This is invasive and wrong. My decision is final. Oracle will be terminated immediately, and all research materials will be secured." The recording ended with Derek storming out. 2 weeks later, according to company records, he resigned his position. Emma leaned back, processing this revelation. Derek's grudge against her father ran deeper than she'd realized. It wasn't just about credit for ideas or financial compensation. Robert had shut down Derek's pet project on ethical grounds. But something still didn't add up. The model's conspiracy had centered on false harassment claims. How did that connect to Oracle? Emma returned to the mysterious email, studying it carefully. The sender clearly had inside knowledge of Horizon. Could it be someone still working at the company? Someone who had been involved with Oracle? On impulse, Emma checked the list of researchers assigned to the project. Most names she didn't recognize, but one jumped out: Melissa Reed. Emma frowned in confusion. Melissa had been Robert's loyal assistant for years. During the trial, she had supported him unwaveringly. Why would she send a cryptic warning email now? Unless... Emma felt a chill as a new possibility emerged. What if Melissa's account had been compromised during the conspiracy, not just to plant evidence, but to monitor ongoing communications? What if the person who sent the email was using Oracle as bait to lure Emma into another trap? Emma immediately ran a trace on the email's origin. The results were inconclusive. The sender had used sophisticated anonymizing techniques, but the timing of the email coincided with Derek Sullivan's release on bail pending trial. This could be the beginning of a new attack on her father, or it could be a genuine warning from someone inside Horizon with concerns about past unethical projects. Emma closed her tablet, feeling the weight of her discovery. She needed to tell her father about the email and what she'd found, but she also needed more information. The Oracle project had been officially terminated, but had some version of it continued in secret? Were Horizon devices currently collecting unauthorized data? These questions had implications beyond her family. If Oracle or something like it was operational, millions of Horizon users worldwide might be unknowingly surveilled in their private spaces. Emma made a decision. Tomorrow, she would show Robert the email and her findings. Together, they would determine whether this was another plot against him or a legitimate whistleblower warning. Either way, the truth needed to come out. As she finally drifted toward sleep, Emma reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in the past year. At 11 years old, she had exposed a multi-million-dollar conspiracy. Now she might be uncovering corporate espionage or privacy violations on a global scale. It was a heavy burden for someone her age. But if there was one thing Emma Caldwell had learned through everything, it was that the truth, however difficult, was always worth pursuing. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Robert's home office as Emma carefully laid out her evidence. The mysterious email, the Oracle project documents, the board meeting recording, everything she had discovered over the past weeks. Robert's expression grew increasingly troubled as he examined each item. When Emma finished her explanation, he sat in silence for several moments, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "I should have told you about Oracle," he finally said. "After everything that happened with the trial, I didn't want to burden you with more complications." "So the project was real," Emma confirmed. "Very real. And exactly as problematic as it appears in these documents." Robert sighed heavily. Derek was brilliant, but ethically flexible. He believed the commercial advantages of invisible data collection outweighed privacy concerns. "But you shut it down." "I thought I did." Robert gestured to the email. "This suggests otherwise." Emma nodded. "I considered 3 possibilities. 1, this is another attempt by Derek to damage you, using Oracle as bait. 2, someone inside Horizon is genuinely concerned that Oracle continued without your knowledge. Or 3, it's completely unrelated to the model's conspiracy. Maybe a disgruntled employee or competitor trying to cause trouble." Robert smiled faintly, pride evident despite his concern. "Your analytical thinking continues to impress me, Em. I've taught you well. So what do we do?" Robert considered the question carefully. First, we need to determine if Oracle or any derivative is currently active within our systems. That requires a comprehensive security audit, one that can't be conducted through normal channels if someone has been operating covertly. Can James help? He has connections with cybersecurity experts. Good thinking. Robert reached for his phone, then hesitated. But we need to be careful about communications. If someone is monitoring my devices— Emma pulled out a small device from her backpack. I developed this last week. It creates a localized signal disruption field. Any listening devices or unauthorized connections within 30 feet will be blocked. Robert looked at his daughter with a mixture of astonishment and pride. You continue to amaze me, Emma Caldwell. With the privacy device activated, Robert called James Wilson on a secure line. The attorney agreed to arrange an independent security audit through specialists he trusted. Meanwhile, Emma would continue monitoring for any unusual activity in Horizon's systems. There's one more thing we need to consider, Robert said after ending the call. Your mother. Emma stiffened slightly. Though their relationship had improved, trust remained fragile. What about her? If Oracle is somehow operational, it represents a massive privacy violation. Going public could devastate Horizon. Someone might try to use her against us again. You think she's still vulnerable to manipulation? I think she's working hard to rebuild her life and would be an easy target for someone looking to hurt us. Robert's voice softened. Despite everything, I don't want to see her dragged into another scandal. Emma considered this. We should warn her then, not about Oracle specifically, but that there might be more trouble coming. The conversation with Catherine later that day was brief but significant. Though Emma provided minimal details, her mother immediately offered to help however she could. The genuine regret and determination in Catherine's eyes reinforced Emma's tentative hope that true reconciliation might eventually be possible. 2 days later, the security audit revealed the truth. Oracle had indeed continued in secret. After Robert officially terminated the project, Derek had moved development to an offshore contractor, funding it through elaborately disguised channels. A small group of programmers had continued refining the surveillance capabilities, deploying test versions in select Horizon products. The most disturbing discovery was that the system had been actively collecting data from Horizon devices in Robert's own home and Catherine's residence, targeting the Caldwell family specifically. He was spying on us, Emma realized with horror. All those months, gathering private moments to use against Dad. The evidence was irrefutable. Derek Sullivan had orchestrated not only the false harassment claims, but also an illegal surveillance operation, all to destroy Robert Caldwell and gain control of Horizon Technologies. The model's conspiracy had been just one part of a larger revenge plot. When confronted with this evidence, Derek accepted a plea deal, implicating several co-conspirators within Horizon who had helped maintain Oracle's covert operations. The company immediately issued security patches to all affected devices and established a transparent data protection policy. 6 weeks later, Emma sat between her parents at Horizon's annual charity gala. For the first time in years, Robert and Catherine were publicly cordial, united by their shared pride in their daughter. When Robert was called to the stage to deliver the keynote address, he surprised everyone by inviting Emma to join him. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert began, his arm around Emma's shoulders, this past year has taught me many lessons about trust, truth, and the courage to stand up for what's right. My company nearly fell because of deception, but it was saved by the determination of this extraordinary young woman. The audience applauded warmly as Emma blushed. Today, I'm announcing the establishment of the Emma Caldwell Foundation for Ethical Technology, Robert continued. This independent organization will provide oversight of Horizon's data practices and fund education initiatives teaching young people about responsible innovation. Emma stepped to the microphone. Technology should bring people together and make lives better, she said, her voice clear and confident. It should never be used to manipulate or invade privacy. My hope is that this foundation will help create a future where innovation and ethics advance hand in hand. As applause filled the ballroom, Emma looked out at the gathered crowd. She saw her mother smiling proudly, James Wilson nodding approval, and many faces that had been skeptical of her father now regarding him with renewed respect. The journey had been painful, the cost nearly unbearable. But standing there beside her father, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of wholeness. Her family would never be the same, but perhaps it could be something new, something stronger, built on hard-earned wisdom and forgiveness. As they left the stage, Robert whispered, "You changed everything, Em. Not just for me, but for countless people who will benefit from ethical technology." Emma smiled. "We did it together, Dad. And we're just getting started." Outside the venue, a gentle snow had begun to fall, covering the San Francisco landscape in a pristine blanket of white. Emma stood between her parents, watching the flakes swirl in the golden light of the street lamps. For this moment at least, all was right with the world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new truths to uncover. But tonight, Emma Caldwell celebrated the most important truth of all, that courage, intelligence, and love could overcome even the most elaborate deceptions. The truth had prevailed, and that was enough. 8-year-old orphan girl comforts a 4-year-old autistic boy who refuses to eat after his mom's death. His widowed millionaire father doesn't know how to cook. Before we begin, tell me something about where you live. What's the weather like today? The November rain hammered against the windows of the upscale Seattle neighborhood as 8-year-old Emma pressed her face against the cold glass of the coffee shop. Her torn sneakers squelched against the wet pavement, and her oversized jacket, 3 sizes too big and found in a dumpster behind a thrift store, hung like a tent around her small frame. She clutched a crumpled dollar bill she'd found earlier that morning in a parking lot, enough for maybe half a muffin if she was lucky. Inside the warm cafe, she watched a man in an expensive charcoal suit sitting at a corner table, his head buried in his hands, his shoulders shook with barely contained sobs. Across from him sat a little boy, maybe 4 years old, staring blankly at an untouched plate of golden pancakes dripping with syrup. The boy's dark hair was perfectly combed, his clothes pristine, a tiny button-down shirt and pressed khakis, but something about his complete stillness made Emma's heart ache with recognition. The man looked up, revealing eyes that were red-rimmed and desperate, dark circles underneath, suggesting weeks without proper sleep. "Please, Tommy!" His voice cracked through the window, raw with desperation. "Just one bite, anything, please, son. Mommy would want you to eat. She'd be so worried about you getting thin like this." The little boy didn't respond. He sat motionless as a statue, his small hands folded neatly in his lap, staring through the food as if it didn't exist in his world. Emma watched the man's shoulders shake as he fought back tears that threatened to spill over again. She'd seen that kind of pain before, the hollow, crushing emptiness that comes when someone you love disappears forever, leaving you lost in a world that suddenly makes no sense. The boy's lips moved almost imperceptibly, his voice barely a whisper. "Mommy food, only mommy food. No other food." Emma's chest tightened with understanding. She knew that voice, the broken whisper of a child lost in grief so deep it swallowed everything else. She'd heard it in her own voice 2 years ago. Without thinking, she pushed open the cafe door. The little bell announcing her entrance. The warmth hit her like a hug she hadn't felt in months, carrying the scent of coffee and cinnamon, but she ignored the curious stares from other customers as she approached their table. Her wet shoes left small puddles on the polished floor as she walked, her chin held high despite her ragged appearance. Other patrons glanced at her with mixtures of pity and disapproval. This clearly homeless child didn't belong in their upscale establishment. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, but clear and sure. The man looked up, startled by the small, bedraggled figure standing beside their table. His first instinct was to call security, but something in her eyes stopped him. They held a wisdom far beyond her years, and a sadness that matched his own. "Your little boy. He's sad about his mommy, isn't he?" James Mitchell stared at this impossible child, dirty, clearly homeless, but speaking with the gravity of someone who understood loss. Yes, she passed away 2 months ago, and he won't eat anything. He's getting so thin, and I don't know what to do anymore. The doctors say if he doesn't start eating soon." His voice broke completely, the words too terrible to finish. Emma nodded solemnly, as if she'd expected this answer. "My mommy went away too, but I learned something really important after she left." She looked directly at Tommy, who for the first time since she'd entered, turned his head slightly toward her voice. There was something different about this girl. She didn't talk to him like the doctors who poked and prodded, or the nannies who tried to force food into his mouth. "Sometimes, when mommies go to heaven, they leave their love in the food, but daddies have to learn the magic words to make it work again." For a moment, the entire cafe seemed to hold its breath, as if everyone sensed they were witnessing something extraordinary. James Mitchell studied the strange little girl standing beside their table, unsure whether to call security or listen to whatever impossible thing she might say next. His businessman's mind told him this was absurd, a homeless child spouting nonsense about magic, but something in Tommy's reaction stopped him cold. His son had actually looked at another person for the first time in weeks, really looked, with focus and interest instead of that terrifying blank stare. "Magic words," James whispered, afraid to break whatever spell was happening between this mysterious child and his son. Emma nodded with the seriousness of a scientist explaining a crucial discovery. She carefully climbed onto the empty chair beside Tommy, moving slowly so as not to startle him. She was so small, her feet barely hung over the edge, swinging slightly as she settled in. "My mommy taught me before she went to heaven. She said love gets cooked into food, but you have to say the special words while you make it, or the love gets lost, and the food becomes just. Regular food, empty food." Tommy's head tilted slightly to the right, the most movement James had seen from him in days. His son's eyes, usually so vacant, held the faintest spark of curiosity. "What kind of words?" James asked, his voice hoarse with desperate hope. He'd tried everything, child psychologists, nutritionists, even a priest who'd assured him that prayer would help. Nothing had worked. His son was slowly fading away, and James felt powerless to stop it. Emma reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn piece of paper that had been folded and refolded so many times the creases were white with wear. The edges were soft from constant handling, and James could see faded pencil marks across its surface. She held it like it was made of the most precious material on earth. "These words. My mommy wrote them down for me before the sickness took her away. She said even if I couldn't cook yet because I was too little, I should keep them safe for when I learned, or for when I met someone who needed them." She smoothed the paper carefully on the table between them. "But your little boy's mommy, she already taught you the words, didn't she, Tommy? She just taught them in a different way." Tommy's eyes moved to Emma's face for the first time, really seeing her. Mommy sing when she cook, happy songs, kitchen songs." "Yes!" Emma's face lit up with genuine joy, as if Tommy had just solved the world's most important puzzle. That's exactly how the love gets in. She was singing her love right into the food while she cooked. Every note was like a little hug going into the soup or the cookies or whatever she was making. But now, Daddy has to learn her songs, so the love can come back. James felt his throat close up with emotion. Sarah had always sung while cooking, little melodies she'd hum while chopping vegetables or stirring sauces. Made-up songs about what they were having for dinner, silly rhymes that made Tommy giggle from his high chair. He'd loved listening to her, had sometimes danced with her around the kitchen, but he'd never paid attention to learning them himself. After the cancer took her, he'd tried everything. Expensive takeout, hired chefs, pre-made meals from the best restaurants in Seattle. But Tommy refused everything that didn't come from his mother's hand. "I don't know her songs," James admitted, his voice breaking with shame and regret. "I never learned to cook. I was always working late, closing deals, building the company, and she did everything domestic. She said she loved taking care of us, so I let her. I should have learned. I should have paid attention." Emma's expression grew thoughtful, her young face serious as she considered this problem. Maybe I could help. I know some songs for cooking that my mommy taught me. And if your little boy helps choose the words and remembers his mommy's songs, maybe his mommy's love might find a way to come back through the food. Different voice, but same love. The hope blooming in James's chest was almost painful. You know how to cook? You're only... How old are you?" "8," Emma said quietly, her voice carrying a weight of experience that no 8-year-old should possess. "When you live by yourself, you have to learn fast or you don't eat. But I think Tommy's mommy was really, really good at cooking, wasn't she? I can tell by how much he misses her food." Tommy spoke again, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Mommy make best food ever, sing happy songs, kitchen smell good, mommy laugh when flour get everywhere." James stared at this impossible child who had somehow gotten his son to speak more in 10 minutes than he had in 2 months of doctors and specialists. The next morning, Emma waited outside the towering glass building where James worked, shivering in the Seattle drizzle that seemed to seep through every layer of her inadequate clothing. She'd spent the night in a doorway 3 blocks away, curled up behind some garbage bins with her jacket pulled over her head, clutching the piece of paper with her mother's recipes, and wondering if the sad man in the expensive suit would actually come back for her like he'd promised. Rich people made lots of promises, she'd learned during her 2 years on the streets. They'd see a homeless child, feel a moment of guilt or pity, offer help, then forget about it the moment they got distracted by their real lives. But something about the desperation in James Mitchell's eyes had seemed different. The way he'd looked at her when Tommy responded, like she was some kind of miracle instead of just a dirty street kid, at exactly noon, just as he'd promised. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. James Mitchell stepped out, looking around nervously, until he spotted her small figure huddled against the concrete wall of the bank building. He was wearing another expensive suit, this one navy blue, but his hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it all morning. "Emma!" He approached carefully, as if she might bolt like a frightened animal. "You came. I wasn't sure. I was afraid you might not trust me." She stood up straighter, despite her chattering teeth, trying to look brave and capable instead of small and scared. "I said I would help, Tommy. I keep my promises." Her voice was steady, but James could see the way she was trembling, whether from cold or nerves he couldn't tell. James noticed her blue-tinged lips and the way she was shaking, her small body clearly struggling against the November chill. Without hesitation, he shrugged off his expensive wool coat, a coat that probably cost more than most people made in a month, and wrapped it around her narrow shoulders. It hung down to her ankles like a royal robe, completely engulfing her tiny frame. "My apartment is just a few blocks away," he said gently, placing a protective hand on her shoulder as they began to walk. "Tommy's been asking about you all morning. He's with his nanny right now, Mrs. Henderson. She's been with our family since Tommy was born. She's just as worried about him as I am, maybe more." Emma clutched the coat around herself as they walked through the upscale downtown district, past boutiques and art galleries she'd only ever seen from the outside. The coat smelled like expensive cologne and success, a world completely foreign to her reality. "Does he still not eat anything?" she asked, though she already knew the answer from the haunted look that never left James's eyes. "Nothing. Yesterday, after we met you, he asked for mommy food 3 more times. But when I tried to give him anything else, Even things Sarah used to make that I bought from restaurants. James's jaw tightened with frustration and helplessness. He just sits there getting smaller every day. The pediatrician says we might have to consider a feeding tube soon if something doesn't change. I can't. I won't let it come to that. They entered a luxury apartment building with marble floors polished to mirror brightness and crystal chandeliers that threw rainbow patterns across the walls. Emma had never seen anything so beautiful, but she tried not to gawk like a tourist as they rode the elevator to the penthouse floor. She could feel the doorman's suspicious gaze following her, probably wondering why a homeless child was accompanying one of the building's most prestigious residents. The elevator climbed smoothly to the 20th floor, and when the doors opened, Emma stepped into a world that seemed like something from a movie. The apartment was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, where cargo ships looked like toys in the distance. Designer furniture in soft creams and blues filled rooms larger than the entire shelter where she'd briefly stayed. But despite all its elegance and obvious wealth, Emma could feel the sadness that hung in the air, like a heavy fog, pressing down on everything beautiful and making it feel hollow. "Tommy?" James called softly as they entered. "I brought our new friend like I promised." A grey-haired woman emerged from what looked like a library, her kind face etched with deep worry lines. She was wearing a simple dress and apron, and her eyes immediately filled with maternal concern when she saw Emma's small figure swimming in James's coat. "He's in his room, Mr. Mitchell," she said quietly, her voice carrying a soft Irish accent. "He wouldn't even look at the chicken noodle soup I made, his former favorite, just pushed the bowl away and asked for Mommy's soup again." Her eyes grew sad as she studied Emma. "And who is this little angel?" Mrs. Henderson immediately took charge of Emma with the efficiency of someone who'd spent decades caring for others. "Oh, you poor dear, you're freezing. Come, let's get you warmed up properly." But Emma gently pulled back, her eyes focused on the hallway where she knew Tommy was waiting. "Can I see him first? I promised I'd help him today. And promises are really important." James led her down a hallway, lined with family photos that told the story of happier times. Emma caught glimpses of a beautiful woman with long dark hair, laughing in a sun-filled kitchen, flour dusting her hands as she baked with a much younger Tommy, the same woman holding baby Tommy in a hospital room, both of them glowing with joy, the three of them on what looked like a beach vacation, James pushing Tommy on a swing while Sarah captured the moment, her smile radiant with contentment. Each photo was a window into a world that had been perfect until cancer shattered it into pieces. Tommy's room was painted with cheerful jungle animals and filled with expensive toys that looked barely touched. The 4-year-old sat in the far corner, his back to the door, surrounded by books and puzzles that held no interest for him. His small shoulders were hunched in a way that made him look even tinier than he was. "Hi, Tommy," Emma said softly, settling cross-legged on the carpet a respectful distance away. She didn't rush toward him or try to force interaction like the well-meaning doctors had done. "I brought my mommy's special paper like I promised. Do you want to see the magic words?" Slowly, like a flower turning towards sunlight, Tommy rotated to face her. His face was noticeably thinner than yesterday, dark circles under his eyes, making him look like a tiny old man, carrying burdens too heavy for his years. Emma carefully unfolded her precious piece of paper, smoothing it on the soft carpet between them. "This one's really special. My mommy called it sunshine soup because she said it could put actual sunshine right into your heart when you're feeling dark inside." Tommy crawled closer, drawn by the mystery of the worn paper and the gentle authority in Emma's voice. "What does it say?" "Well," Emma began, pointing to the faded pencil marks, "first, you have to introduce yourself to all the ingredients. You tell the carrots how beautiful and bright they are, thank the chicken for being brave and strong, and let the celery know you appreciate how fresh and green it decided to be just for your soup." Tommy's eyes widened slightly. "You talk to food?" "Of course. Food has feelings just like people do. When someone says mean things to you, it hurts your feelings and makes you sad, right? Well, Food is the same way. If you ignore it or just grab it without saying thank you, it doesn't want to help you feel better. But if you're kind and grateful, it wants to share all its good energy with you. James knelt beside them, watching this incredible interaction unfold. His business training told him this was nonsense, but Tommy was more engaged than he'd been since Sarah's death. "My mummy did that too," Tommy whispered, a ghost of excitement in his voice. "She said hello, pretty tomatoes, and thank you, strong onions when she cooked. I thought she was just being silly." "She wasn't being silly at all," Emma said seriously. "She was doing the most important part of cooking, putting love into the food. And there's something else really important." She leaned closer conspiratorially. "When you stir the soup, you have to sing songs about all the people you love. That's how the love gets mixed in with all the flavors." Tommy's small hand reached out tentatively to touch the paper. "What kind of songs?" Emma's face brightened with inspiration. "Any songs that make your heart feel warm. Songs about your mommy, songs about your daddy, songs about feeling safe and happy. The soup doesn't care if you're a good singer, it just cares that the songs come from your heart." "Mommy singed about me when she cooked," Tommy said, his voice growing stronger. "She made up songs with my name in them, silly songs that made me laugh." "Perfect. Those are exactly the right kinds of songs. Do you remember any of them?" Tommy thought hard, his brow furrowed with concentration. Then hesitantly, he began to hum a simple melody. "Tommy, Tommy, growing strong, Mommy loves you all day long." James felt tears spring to his eyes. It was Sarah's voice he was hearing, the same melody, the same rhythm she'd used during countless dinner preparations. That evening, after Mrs. Henderson had insisted on giving Emma a warm bath and finding some of Tommy's outgrown clothes that might fit her small frame, the little girl sat at the kitchen island feeling more human than she had in months. The soft pajamas smelled like fabric softener and comfort, luxuries she'd almost forgotten existed. Tommy appeared beside her, clutching a stuffed elephant that looked well loved. "Emma," he whispered, glancing toward the living room where his father was finishing a work call. "Will you sleep in my room tonight? I get really scared when it's dark, and Daddy looks sad when I wake up crying." James finished his call and approached them, overhearing the request. His first instinct was to object. This child was still essentially a stranger, after all, despite the miraculous effect she'd had on Tommy. But something in his son's voice, the first request he'd made since Sarah died, stopped the words before they could form. "Would that be okay with you, Emma?" James asked carefully. "We have guest rooms, if you'd prefer your own space." Emma shook her head immediately. "If Tommy needs me close, then that's where I should be. When I was little and scared, my mommy used to say that sometimes the best medicine is just knowing someone who cares is nearby." And they set up a cozy nest on the floor of Tommy's room, using the softest blankets Mrs. Henderson could find, along with pillows that felt like clouds. As they settled in for the night, Tommy spoke from his race car bed, his voice small in the darkness. "Emma, my mommy used to sing me to sleep every night. She said the songs would keep the scary dreams away and fill my head with happy thoughts instead. Do you know any sleep songs?" Emma thought for a moment, then began to hum softly, a melody her own mother had sung during those final weeks in the hospital, when pain medication couldn't chase away all the fear. The tune was simple, but achingly beautiful, filled with love and comfort and the promise that tomorrow could be better than today. "Sunshine in your dreams, little one," she sang quietly, her young voice pure and sweet in the darkness. "Moonbeams keep you safe till morning comes. Angels watch you sleeping, love surrounds you deep, until the sunrise wakes you from your peaceful sleep." From the doorway, James listened with tears streaming down his face. It wasn't exactly the same melody Sarah used to sing, but it was close. So close, it felt like his wife's spirit was somehow present in this remarkable child's voice. The tune carried the same gentle rhythm Sarah had hummed while rocking Tommy as a baby, while cooking dinner, while fighting cancer with grace and courage in those final months. "How do you know that song?" he whispered, stepping into the room. Emma's voice was drowsy but certain. All mommies know it somehow. Mine taught it to me when I was really little, before I even understood what the words meant. Tommy's mommy probably sang it too, maybe with different words but the same heart. It's the song that connects all the love in the world, the one that reminds us we're never really alone. For the first time in 2 months, Tommy fell asleep without crying, his breathing deep and peaceful as the melody wrapped around him like a lullaby blanket. James stood in the hallway long after both children were breathing deeply, feeling something he'd thought was lost forever, beginning to stir in his heart. This little girl, this brave, impossible child who'd appeared in their lives like an answer to prayers he'd been afraid to voice, had brought music back into their silent house in just 2 days. In the morning, he decided, they would cook together. Emma would teach them to channel Sarah's love through different hands and a different voice, and maybe, somehow, they could all learn to live again instead of just surviving. But as he finally headed to his own empty bedroom, James couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Emma's story than she'd shared. The way she'd known that melody, the wisdom in her 8-year-old eyes, the coincidence of finding them at exactly the moment they needed her most. It felt like more than chance. It felt like destiny, like Sarah herself had somehow sent this child to save the family she'd had to leave behind. The next morning, Emma woke to find Tommy sitting by the large window in his room, staring out at the Seattle skyline with more alertness and focus than he'd shown in weeks. The morning light caught the gold flecks in his brown eyes that looked so much like his mother's in the photographs lining the hallway. When he saw her stirring from her nest of blankets, he actually smiled, a small, tentative expression that transformed his entire face and made her heart soar with hope. "Good morning, Tommy. Did you sleep better last night?" He nodded eagerly, then paused, his expression growing thoughtful. "Emma? Last night I had the most wonderful dream about Mommy. She was in our old kitchen, the one we had before we moved to this big apartment, and she was cooking and singing just like she used to. She looked so happy and healthy, not sick like at the end." Emma sat up, immediately interested. Dreams about lost parents were sacred things, not to be dismissed or minimized. What did she say in the dream? She said. Tommy's voice grew quiet with wonder. "She said you were going to teach Daddy her songs, but in a different way. She said sometimes love has to find new voices to keep going, and that she picked you special to help us remember how to be happy again." Emma felt goosebumps rise along her arms. "That sounds like a very important dream, Tommy. I think your mommy was telling you something real." James appeared in the doorway, already dressed for what should have been another day at the office, but carrying a cup of coffee and looking more rested than he had in months. Dark circles still shadowed his eyes, but there was something different about his posture, less defeated, more hopeful. "Actually," he announced, "I called my office early this morning and cleared my entire schedule. I'm taking the day off. I want to learn how to make this sunshine soup. And I want to learn the right way, with songs and gratitude and all the special words Emma's mother wrote down." An hour later, the three of them stood in the pristine kitchen that Sarah had designed with such love and care, but that James had barely used since her death. The granite countertops gleamed under pendant lights, and every appliance was top of the line, but the room had felt cold and lifeless for months, until now. Emma had carefully laid out her mother's recipe paper on the counter, its worn edges and faded pencil marks looking humble but precious against the expensive surface. Mrs. Henderson had gathered all the necessary ingredients, arranging them like an artist's palette. Bright orange carrots, crisp celery stalks, a whole chicken that looked farm fresh, herbs that filled the air with earthy promise. "Now remember," Emma explained with the seriousness of a master chef instructing students, "cooking isn't just about following directions. It's about making friends with your food and inviting love into every single step. Tommy, pick up a carrot and tell it something nice, something that comes from your heart." Tommy giggled, the first genuine laughter James had heard from him since Sarah's death, a sound so beautiful it made his chest ache with relief. "Hello, Carrot. You're very orange and pretty, and I bet you grew really hard to be so perfect for our soup." Wonderful. Now, Daddy, you try with the celery. Don't think too much about it, just say what feels right." James felt absolutely ridiculous talking to vegetables, but the hope shining in his son's eyes made him willing to try anything. Hello, celery. Thank you for being so fresh and green and for growing in the sunshine so you could help us make something special today." Emma nodded approvingly. "Perfect. You're both naturals at this. Now we start the actual cooking, but here's the most important part. Tommy, can you remember any of the songs your mommy used to sing while she cooked? Even just humming the tunes would be perfect." Tommy closed his eyes, concentrating hard. Then he began to hum hesitantly, his small voice carrying a melody that made James's breath catch. It was the same tune Emma had sung the night before, but with Sarah's rhythm, Sarah's pauses, Sarah's joy woven through every note. Slowly, words began to emerge. Stirring, stirring, love goes in. Warm my baby from within, carrots dancing, celery too, making soup for me and you. James's breath caught completely. It was exactly how Sarah used to sing while cooking their Sunday dinners, her voice filling the kitchen with warmth and contentment. "That's it." Emma clapped her hands in delight. "That's your mommy's love song. Now we all sing together while we cook, and the soup will taste like love because we're putting love into making it." As they chopped and stirred and sang together, something truly magical began to happen. The kitchen filled with warmth that had nothing to do with the stove's heat. Tommy helped measure ingredients with careful precision. James sang off-key but with his whole heart, and Emma conducted them like a tiny orchestra conductor, keeping them all in harmony. When the soup was finally ready, filling the kitchen with an aroma that smelled like comfort and home, Tommy took his first voluntary bite of food in 2 months. His eyes widened with surprise and joy. "It tastes like Mommy's love," he whispered in wonder, and then promptly ate an entire bowl without stopping. James was so overcome with relief and gratitude that he had to sit down, his hands shaking as the weight of 2 months' worry finally began to lift from his shoulders. "Emma, I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given me my son back. You've saved our family." But even as the words left his mouth, his phone rang with an intrusive electronic chirp. Mrs. Henderson answered it in the next room, and James could hear her voice growing concerned, then alarmed. She returned to the kitchen with a deeply troubled expression, her face pale with worry. "Mr. Mitchell, that was someone from Child Protective Services. They're conducting an active search for a missing child. An 8-year-old girl named Emma who disappeared from foster care 3 weeks ago. They're asking all the hospitals, shelters and community centers to keep an eye out. They said she's considered at risk and they're very worried about her safety." Emma went completely still, her spoon halfway to her mouth, her face suddenly guarded. James looked from Mrs. Henderson to Emma, his mind racing with implications and questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. "Emma, is there something you need to tell us?" Emma set down her spoon with trembling hands, her eyes darting between James and Mrs. Henderson like a cornered animal calculating escape routes. The warmth that had filled the kitchen moments before suddenly felt suffocating, and the beautiful apartment that had seemed like a sanctuary now felt like a trap. "I didn't mean to lie," she whispered, her voice so small it was barely audible. I couldn't go back there, not to that place." Her shoulders began to shake, and tears she'd been holding back for weeks finally spilled over. "The foster home was supposed to be temporary, just until they found me a real family. But there were so many kids and never enough food. And the man who ran it," she wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking even smaller than her 8 years. "He said things, did things, made some of the older girls do things they didn't want to do. When I tried to tell the social worker, she said I was making up stories for attention. She said problem children always blame others for their situations." James felt rage building in his chest, not at Emma, but at a system that had failed this remarkable child so completely. "Emma, you're safe here. We won't let anyone hurt you." "But they'll make me go back," Emma said, her voice breaking completely. "They always make kids go back. And if they find out I ran away, they'll send me somewhere worse. They said if I caused any more trouble, I'd end up in juvenile detention until I turned 18. Tommy, who had been listening with wide eyes, suddenly spoke up with more determination than James had heard from him since Sarah's death. "Daddy, we can't let them take Emma away. She saved me. She brought Mommy's songs back. We have to protect her now." Mrs. Henderson, who had raised 3 children of her own and understood the complexities of the system, spoke carefully. "Mr. Mitchell, there are legal procedures we need to follow, but perhaps we could explore other options. Emma clearly needs a stable home, and she's done more for Tommy in 3 days than months of therapy achieved." James's mind raced through possibilities. His wealth and connections could open doors, but Emma's situation was complicated. She wasn't just a runaway. She was a ward of the state, with a documented history of behavioral problems, according to her file. "Emma," he said gently, kneeling to her eye level, "I want you to listen to me very carefully. I'm going to call my attorney, the best family lawyer in Seattle. We're going to figure out a way to keep you safe and keep you here, if that's what you want. But I need you to trust me and be completely honest about everything that happened." Emma looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of deception or false promises. She'd learned not to trust adults easily. But something in James's expression reminded her of her own father before grief had broken him. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I haven't told you about why I was really at that coffee shop when I found you and Tommy." James waited patiently, sensing this was important. "I wasn't just looking for food, I was looking for him, for Tommy." She pulled a newspaper clipping from her jacket pocket, worn from handling. It was an article about Sarah Mitchell's death, including a photo of the family. "I saw this article 3 weeks ago when someone left a newspaper on a park bench. When I read about how Tommy stopped eating after his mommy died, I knew I had to find him." Mrs. Henderson gasped softly. "You've been looking for us specifically?" Emma nodded. "My mommy always said her recipes were meant to be shared with children who needed them. When I read about Tommy, I felt like my mommy was telling me he was the one I was supposed to help. I've been watching your building for days, waiting for the right moment." James stared at this extraordinary child who had orchestrated their meeting with the wisdom of someone far beyond her years. "Emma, that's incredible. But how did you know we'd be at that specific coffee shop?" "I followed you from your building that morning. I could see how sad you both were, and I knew Tommy wasn't eating by how thin he looked. When you went into the cafe, I could tell through the window that you were both crying. That's when I knew it was time." The phone rang again, piercing the emotional moment. Mrs. Henderson answered with a worried expression, then covered the receiver. "It's Child Protective Services again. They want to speak with you directly, Mr. Mitchell. They said they have reason to believe Emma might be in this area." Emma's face went white with terror. "They found me. They're going to take me away." James stood up, his jaw set with determination. "Not if I have anything to say about it." James took the phone with the confidence of a man accustomed to high-stakes negotiations, but his protective instincts toward Emma made his voice sharp with barely controlled anger. "This is James Mitchell," he said curtly into the receiver. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Sandra Williams from Child Protective Services. We're conducting a search for a missing child, and we have reports that you may have had contact with her. 8-year-old Emma Patterson, brown hair, small for her age, missing from foster care for 3 weeks." James looked at Emma, who was pressed against Tommy's side, both children clinging to each other with desperate fear. "And what makes you think I would have information about this child? We've been canvassing the upscale neighborhoods where a homeless child might seek help. Your building's doorman mentioned seeing you with a young girl yesterday. We need to speak with you immediately." "I see. And what exactly happened to this child while she was in your care that made her feel running away was safer than staying in the system?" There was a pause. "Mr. Mitchell, I don't appreciate your tone. We're trying to locate a vulnerable child who could be in danger on the streets. If you have any information—" "Ms. Williams," James interrupted, his voice taking on the commanding tone he used in boardrooms, "I'm going to stop you right there. Before we continue this conversation, I want you to know that I'm recording this call, and my attorney will be present for any further discussions. If you want to continue, you can call back in 2 hours." He hung up without waiting for a response. Emma stared at him with amazement. You hung up on them. Won't that make them more suspicious?" "Probably," James admitted, "but it will also give us time to get proper legal representation. Emma, I need you to tell me everything about the foster home, names, addresses, specific incidents. My lawyer needs to know exactly what we're dealing with." Over the next hour, Emma reluctantly shared details that made James's blood boil. The foster father, Robert Hendricks, ran what was essentially a profit center disguised as childcare. 23 children crammed into a house meant for a family of 4. Minimal food, no supervision, and inappropriate behavior that the overwhelmed social workers either didn't see or chose to ignore. "The worst part," Emma said quietly, "was watching the little ones cry for their real families while nobody cared enough to comfort them. Some of those kids had been there for years, just forgotten." Mrs. Henderson wiped tears from her eyes. "That's no way for any child to live." Tommy, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke up. "Daddy, if Emma has to go back there, couldn't we adopt her, like people adopt puppies from the shelter?" The innocence of the question hit James like a physical blow. "It's more complicated than that, son, but—" He looked at Emma, who was staring at him with cautious hope. "But maybe not impossible." James's phone buzzed with a text from his attorney, confirming he'd be there within the hour. But before he could respond, the building's intercom crackled to life. "Mr. Mitchell," the doorman's voice came through, tense with anxiety. "There are 2 people here from Child Protective Services. They say they need to speak with you immediately about an urgent matter involving a missing child." Emma bolted upright, terror written across her face. "They're here. They're going to take me away right now." James moved to the intercom. "Tell them my attorney will be here shortly, and they can wait in the lobby until then. Sir, they're saying they have a court order for immediate removal of any minor children found on the premises who match the description of the missing child." Emma was now crying openly, clinging to Tommy, who was also beginning to panic. "Please don't let them take me. Please. I'll be good. I'll do anything you want. Just don't make me go back there." James felt something fierce and protective rise in his chest, the same feeling he'd had when Tommy was born, when Sarah was diagnosed, when his family needed him to be strong. "Emma, listen to me. I promise you, I will not let them take you back to a place where you're not safe. Do you trust me?" Through her tears, Emma nodded. "Good. Mrs. Henderson, take both children to Tommy's room and lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me. Emma, remember what you told Tommy about his mother's love staying in the food? Well, sometimes grown-ups have to be brave to protect the people they love. That's what I'm going to do right now." As Mrs. Henderson guided the children away, James straightened his tie and prepared for the most important negotiation of his life. But just as he reached for the intercom to let the social workers up, his phone rang with a call that would change everything. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but when he answered, the voice on the other end made his blood run cold. "Is this James Mitchell? This is Detective Ray Martinez with Seattle PD. We need to talk to you immediately about Emma Patterson. We have new information about her case that changes everything." James gripped the phone tighter, his heart pounding. "Detective Martinez, I'm listening. Mr. Mitchell, we've just arrested Robert Hendricks, the foster parent responsible for Emma Patterson. We have evidence of systematic abuse and neglect involving multiple children in his care. Emma wasn't just running away. She was fleeing a dangerous situation that we're now treating as a criminal matter." Relief and fury warred in James's chest. "What kind of evidence?" "I can't give you all the details over the phone, but we have testimony from several other children, financial records showing fraud, and physical evidence of inappropriate conduct. Emma's allegations, which were dismissed by her caseworker, are now central to our investigation. We need to speak with her, but as a witness, not a runaway. James heard the intercom buzz again. The social workers downstairs were getting impatient. "Detective, there are CPS workers here right now trying to take her back into the system. What are my options?" "Don't let them take her anywhere until I get there. Emma is a key witness in an active criminal investigation, and her safety is our primary concern. I'm 10 minutes away." James immediately called to Mrs. Henderson. "Change of plans. Keep the children where they are, but we may have some good news coming." He pressed the intercom button. "This is James Mitchell. I understand you're here about Emma Patterson. However, I've just been contacted by Seattle Police Detective Martinez regarding this case. The child is now considered a protected witness in a criminal investigation. You'll need to coordinate with the detective before taking any action." There was a long pause. "Mr. Mitchell, we have our orders, and I have mine from the Seattle Police Department. Detective Martinez will be here in 10 minutes to explain the situation. You're welcome to wait in the lobby." James hung up and went to Tommy's room, where he found Emma teaching Tommy a clapping game to distract him from the stress. Her resilience amazed him. Even in her moment of greatest fear, she was taking care of his son. "Emma," he said gently, "I have some news. The police have arrested the man who was hurting you and the other children at the foster home. You're not in trouble. You're a hero for speaking up about what was happening." Emma's eyes widened. "They arrested Mr. Hendricks. Really? Really? And Detective Martinez wants to talk to you, but as someone who helped solve a crime, not as someone who did anything wrong." For the first time since the phone calls began, Emma smiled. "Does that mean I don't have to go back there?" "It means we have options now, legal options. And Emma, there's something I want to ask you, but I want you to think about it carefully." Tommy bounced up excitedly. "Are you going to ask her what I think you're going to ask her?" James knelt down, so he was at eye level with both children. "Emma, these past few days, you've become part of our family. You saved Tommy, you brought music back to our home, and you've shown more courage and wisdom than many adults I know. I know this is all happening very fast, but how would you feel about staying with us? Not just for a few days, but permanently?" Emma stared at him in shock. "You mean, like a real family? Forever?" "Like a real family. Forever. I'll need to file adoption papers, and there will be legal processes to follow. But my attorney thinks we have a strong case, especially with the criminal charges against your former foster placement." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time, they were tears of joy. "You really want me, even though I'm just a street kid with nothing to offer?" James felt his own eyes getting misty. "Emma, you saved my son's life. You brought love back into our home when I thought it was gone forever. You have everything to offer." Tommy jumped up and down. "Say yes, Emma, say yes. We can be brother and sister. And you can teach me more cooking songs, and we can take care of Daddy together." Just then, the doorbell rang. James checked the security monitor. A man in a detective's badge stood outside, along with the two social workers who looked significantly less confident than they had earlier. "That's Detective Martinez. Emma, are you ready to tell your story to someone who will actually listen and believe you?" Emma squared her small shoulders with determination. "I'm ready. And Mr. James, thank you for being the first grown-up who wanted to protect me instead of control me." As James opened the door to let the detective in, he couldn't help but think about Sarah and how proud she would be of the family they were building. Emma had come into their lives like an answer to prayers, but maybe, just maybe, they were the answer to hers as well. Detective Martinez was a kind-faced man in his 40s who immediately put Emma at ease. "Hello, Emma. I've heard you're a very brave girl who helped us discover some important information about children who needed protection." But as the detective began to explain the situation to the social workers, his phone rang. His expression grew serious as he listened. Then he looked directly at James with an expression of surprise and concern. Mr. Mitchell, that was my partner. We've discovered something unexpected about Emma's background that you need to know immediately. Detective Martinez looked directly at Emma with gentle but serious eyes. Emma, we've been investigating your case, and we discovered something about your family history that changes everything. Your father, the one you thought abandoned you after your mother died, he didn't just disappear because he couldn't cope with grief. Emma's face went pale. What do you mean? 3 months after your mother passed away, your father was in a serious car accident. He's been in a specialized care facility in Portland, recovering from a traumatic brain injury. He's been asking about you every day since he regained consciousness 6 months ago, but the hospital and social services lost track of your location when you entered foster care. The room fell completely silent. James felt the ground shift beneath him as he realized what this meant. My daddy is alive. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Not only alive, but fighting every day to get well enough to take care of you again. The doctors say he's made remarkable progress. His speech has returned, his memory is improving, and his motor functions are nearly back to normal. He's been working with social workers trying to locate you. Emma began to shake. He wants me back? Emma, your father never stopped wanting you. When he woke up and learned you'd been placed in foster care, he started rehabilitation therapy with a determination the doctors had never seen. He's been working 2 jobs from his hospital bed, physical therapy to get his body back, and legal advocacy to get his daughter back. James felt his heart breaking and soaring simultaneously. This was wonderful news for Emma, but it meant losing her just when she'd become part of their family. There's more, Detective Martinez continued. Your father has been following news stories about Tommy's situation. When he saw the article about a boy who wouldn't eat after losing his mother, he told his social worker that it sounded like something his Emma would want to help with. He's been praying you would find your way to a family that needed your special gift with cooking and caring for people. Emma looked confused. He knew about Tommy? He didn't know specifically, but he knew you. He told everyone at the hospital that his daughter had a gift for helping sad children feel better, that your mother had taught you special ways to cook with love. He said if you were out there somewhere, you'd find someone who needed that gift. Tommy, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke up. Emma, your daddy sounds really nice and really smart. James struggled with conflicting emotions. He'd fallen in love with the idea of Emma as his daughter, but how could he stand in the way of a father who had fought so hard to recover and reclaim his child? When can I see him? Emma asked, her voice trembling with hope and fear. We can arrange a video call today, and if you're both comfortable, we can arrange a visit tomorrow. But Emma, there's something important you need to understand. Your father knows that you've been through trauma, and he wants whatever is best for you, even if that means taking time to rebuild your relationship. Emma looked at James with tears in her eyes. Mr. James, I'm so confused. I want to see my daddy, but I don't want to leave you and Tommy. You saved me too. James knelt down and took her hands. Emma, the most important thing is that you get to choose what feels right for you. No one is going to force you into anything. Maybe there's a way for all of us to be in your life. Detective Martinez smiled. Actually, that's exactly what your father was hoping. He asked if the family that had been taking care of you might be willing to meet him. He said he wanted to thank them personally for protecting his daughter when he couldn't. Mrs. Henderson, who had been wiping tears throughout the conversation, spoke up. This child has brought so much healing to this household. If her father is half as special as she is, I think we're about to witness something beautiful. Tommy tugged on Emma's sleeve. Emma, maybe your daddy can come have dinner with us. You can make sunshine soup for everyone, and we can teach him the songs, and he can tell us stories about when you were little. Emma looked around at all the faces surrounding her, people who had shown her more love and protection in 4 days than she'd experienced in 2 years on her own. Can we really do that? Can my daddy meet my new family? Detective Martinez nodded. Emma, Your father's first words when he woke up were, "Where is my Emma? And who is taking care of her?" I think he's going to be very grateful to meet the people who answered that question. But just as Emma was beginning to smile, Detective Martinez's radio crackled with an urgent message that made his expression change dramatically. "Detective Martinez, we need you back at the station immediately. There's been a development in the Hendricks case that requires Emma's immediate attention. We've discovered something about the other children that changes the entire scope of the investigation." Detective Martinez's expression grew grave as he listened to the message. "Emma, we need to talk about something important. The other children from the foster home. We've discovered that several of them have no family to return to, and they're going to need safe places to stay while we sort out their situations." Emma's eyes widened with understanding. "The little ones? The ones who cried at night?" "Yes. There's a 5-year-old named Marcus who's been asking for you specifically. He told our child psychologist that you used to sing to him when he had nightmares and that you shared your food with him when there wasn't enough. He's scared and doesn't trust any of the adults trying to help him." James felt something shift in his chest. "How many children are we talking about?" 7 children who are now in emergency placement, but 3 of them, Marcus, his 6-year-old sister Lily, and a 4-year-old named Carlos, are having severe emotional reactions. They're not eating, not speaking, showing signs of trauma that our usual foster families aren't equipped to handle. Emma stood up straighter, her voice filled with determination. "They need the cooking songs. They need someone who understands what it feels like to be scared and alone." Tommy looked up at his father with the innocent wisdom that had become familiar. "Daddy, remember when Emma helped me? Maybe she could help them too. Maybe we could help them too." James looked around the room, at Emma, whose eyes were bright with purpose, at Tommy, who was more alive than he'd been in months, at Mrs. Henderson, who was nodding encouragingly, at Detective Martinez, who was watching this conversation with interest. "Detective, what would be required if we wanted to help these children? Not permanently, necessarily, but as emergency placement while they heal." "Mr. Mitchell, you'd need to apply for emergency foster certification, which, given your background check and financial stability, could be expedited. But are you sure you're prepared for that level of responsibility? These children have been through severe trauma." Emma looked at James with hope and determination. "Mr. James, I know how to help scared kids. My mummy taught me, and I learned more on the streets. Food and songs and feeling safe, that's what they need most." James thought about his enormous apartment, his resources, his ability to hire additional help. But more than that, he thought about the transformation he'd witnessed in his own son, and the light that had returned to their home through Emma's presence. "Mrs. Henderson, what do you think? Could we manage 3 more children temporarily?" Mrs. Henderson straightened up with the efficiency of someone who'd spent decades caring for others. "Mr. Mitchell, this apartment is large enough for a small army, and I've raised children through worse situations than this. If Emma is willing to help, and if these little ones need us, then we have a duty to step up." Tommy was practically bouncing with excitement. "We could be like a big family. Emma could teach everyone the cooking songs, and I could share my toys, and maybe they could help me build the big puzzle I've been too sad to finish." Detective Martinez looked impressed. "This is highly unusual, but given the circumstances and Emma's relationship with these children, it might be exactly what they need. However, there's one more thing you should know." He paused, checking his notes. "Emma's father has been following this case from his hospital bed. When he learned about the other children's situation, he asked if he could help too. He's a construction supervisor, was before his accident, and he's offered to do repairs and improvements on any facility that takes in these children. He wants to contribute to their care, even while he's still recovering." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "My daddy wants to help the other kids too. Your father said, and I quote, 'My Emma has a gift for healing broken hearts. If she's found people who understand that gift, then I want to support whatever family has supported her.'" James felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. In 4 days, his family had grown from 2 broken people to potentially 6 children who needed love and healing. Detective, when can we meet Emma's father? And when can we meet these children? I can arrange the video call with Emma's father this afternoon, and if everyone agrees, we could have the children here by evening. But Mr. Mitchell, I need you to understand, this isn't just about providing a temporary home. These children will need therapy, medical care, educational support, and more patience than you can imagine. Emma stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. When she turned back to the room, her expression was filled with quiet determination. Mr. James, Tommy, Mrs. Henderson, you saved me when I thought no one cared if I lived or died. Now we have a chance to save other kids who feel the same way I did. If my daddy approves, and if you're willing, I think we should try. James looked at his son, who was nodding eagerly, then at Mrs. Henderson, who was already mentally calculating sleeping arrangements and meal plans. All right then, let's do this. Let's build the family that all these children deserve. But as Detective Martinez reached for his phone to begin making arrangements, it rang with an incoming call that made his face turn serious. Detective Martinez, what? Are you sure? We'll be right there. He hung up and looked at the group with concern. That was the hospital in Portland. Emma's father has just made an unexpected decision that's going to change all of our plans. Detective Martinez's phone call had left everyone in the room holding their breath. Emma gripped Tommy's hand tightly, her face pale with worry. What kind of decision? Emma whispered. Your father has just checked himself out of the hospital against medical advice. He's driving to Seattle right now. He said he couldn't wait another day to see his daughter, and when he learned about the other children who needed help, he decided he was strong enough to be part of the solution immediately. Emma's eyes widened. He's coming here, today? He should arrive within the next 2 hours, but Emma, there's something else. He's not coming alone. James felt his chest tighten. What do you mean? Emma's father has been working with a non-profit organization that specializes in trauma recovery for children. He's bringing Dr. Sarah Chen, a child psychologist who has experience with exactly the kind of situation these foster children are facing. He wants to make sure every child gets the help they need. Emma sat down heavily, overwhelmed by the rapid developments. My daddy, he's really coming, and he's bringing help for the other kids. Detective Martinez smiled. Emma, your father has spent 6 months in recovery thinking about nothing but getting back to you and making sure you're safe and happy. When he learned you'd been helping other children who went through trauma like yours, he said it was exactly what your mother would have wanted you to do. Tommy looked confused. Emma, are you happy or scared? Oh, both, Emma admitted. I've dreamed about seeing my daddy again every night for 2 years. But what if I'm different now? What if he doesn't like who I've become? Mrs. Henderson moved to sit beside Emma, her voice gentle but firm. Child, love doesn't work that way. Your father isn't coming to judge who you've become. He's coming to celebrate that you survived and found your way to people who cherish you. James knelt in front of Emma. Emma, no matter what happens with your father, you will always be part of our family now. You've changed our lives forever, and that bond doesn't disappear just because your situation changes. An hour later, James's apartment had been transformed into a preparation zone. Mrs. Henderson was cooking enough food for a small army. Tommy was arranging his toys in the living room so the other children would feel welcome. And Emma was carefully writing out copies of her mother's recipes so each child could have their own set of magic words. When the intercom buzzed, Emma froze completely. Emma, James said gently, are you ready? She nodded, though her hands were shaking. Tommy took one of her hands, and James took the other as they walked to the door. When James opened it, they saw Detective Martinez, accompanied by a man who looked like an older version of Emma. The same warm brown eyes, the same determined chin, but with graying hair, and the careful movements of someone still recovering from serious injury. Beside him stood an Asian woman with kind eyes carrying a medical bag. Emma, the man said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Daddy," Emma whispered. David Patterson dropped to his knees and Emma ran into his arms. They held each other and cried for several minutes, while everyone else in the room wiped away their own tears. "My brave girl," David whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm so sorry you had to be strong all by yourself." "I wasn't by myself, Daddy. I found Tommy and Mr. James and Mrs. Henderson, and they took care of me. And now we're going to take care of other kids who need help." David looked up at James with tears in his eyes. "Mr. Mitchell, I will never be able to repay you for protecting my daughter when I couldn't." James helped them both stand. "David, your daughter saved my family. She brought my son back to life and taught us how to love again. We're the ones who should be thanking you for raising such an extraordinary child." Dr. Chen stepped forward. "I hate to interrupt this beautiful reunion, but we have 3 very scared children waiting downstairs who need to see that Emma is safe and happy before they'll trust any of us." Emma wiped her eyes and stood straighter. "They're here, Marcus and Lily and Carlos. They're in the lobby with a social worker. Marcus hasn't spoken since yesterday." But when he heard Emma's name, he perked up for the first time. Emma looked around the room at her father, at James and Tommy, at Mrs. Henderson and at Dr. Chen. "Are we really going to do this? Are we really going to be one big family that takes care of each other?" And David Patterson smiled, the first real smile he'd had since his wife died 3 years ago. "Emma, your mother always said that families aren't just about blood. They're about people who choose to love and protect each other. I think she'd be very proud of the family you've built." James nodded. "We're going to need more bedrooms, more high chairs, probably more patience than any of us knew we had. But yes, Emma, we're going to do this together." Tommy tugged on Emma's sleeve. "Emma, can we go get the little kids now? I want to show them the kitchen where we make the singing soup." Emma looked at her father. "Daddy, are you strong enough for this?" David Patterson stood up straighter, his eyes clear and determined. "Emma, for the past 6 months, the only thing that kept me fighting to get better was the thought of taking care of you again. Now I find out you've been taking care of others who needed you. I've never been more ready for anything in my life." And so, 20 minutes later, the penthouse apartment that had been silent with grief just a week before was filled with the voices of 6 children. 3 adults who had committed to loving them, and Dr. Chen, who was already planning therapy sessions that would help heal young hearts. As Emma stood in the kitchen, teaching 5-year-old Marcus how to say hello to carrots, while Tommy helped 6-year-old Lily measure ingredients, and 4-year-old Carlos giggled at Mrs. Henderson's funny faces, James realized that sometimes the most broken families become the strongest ones. His phone buzzed with a text from his lawyer. "Adoption papers are ready for all children when you are. Family court judge says she's never seen a more compelling case for emergency family formation." James looked around his kitchen, now filled with children's laughter and the smell of sunshine soup, and thought about Sarah. She would have loved this chaos, this beautiful noise, this house full of children who needed love and had found it in the most unexpected way. Emma caught his eye and smiled, the radiant smile of a child who had learned that sometimes when you save someone else, you end up saving yourself too. Outside, snow began to fall gently on Seattle, covering the city in a blanket of new beginnings.